Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at a woman and thought she just carries something different, like peace, power, and presence live in her every move? Today, let's dive into the topic, 10 things I do daily to feel like that woman. These aren't surface-level tips. These are soul-level habits that helped me rebuild my confidence, my clarity, and my calm. If you're ready to step into the version of you that's been waiting to be seen, stay with me. And if you want more grounded, real talk like this, subscribe. You belong in this space. I wake up before the noise, before the phone, before the world remembers my name. There's a stillness in that moment, the kind that feels like an invitation and a warning. It tells me I can choose peace, or I can let the world choose for me. Most people roll out of bed and fall straight into performance mode, but I can't do that anymore. My soul can't keep running on empty, so I sit, I breathe, and I ask myself, not what needs to get done, but what needs to be felt. What do I carry into this day that I haven't yet made peace with? What truth am I denying in the name of staying strong? There's a difference between being productive and being present. I used to think if I just checked enough boxes, I'd finally feel like I was enough. But no list, no title, no praise has ever filled the quiet ache inside me. So now, instead of rushing to prove myself, I sit with the version of me that's tired of pretending. The one who's been surviving off applause, but starving for authenticity. I listen to her. I hold space for her. I don't try to fix her. I let her be. Because sometimes healing doesn't look like doing. It looks like being still. It looks like facing the mirror and letting your own eyes see the pain they've been avoiding. Every morning there's a moment where I almost reach for my phone. Almost. That instinct to escape. To scroll, to numb, it's real. But I've learned that the more I disconnect from myself, the more I crave things that don't even feed me. So I don't pick up distraction anymore. I pick up truth. I reach for my journal. And sometimes the page stays blank. Because my thoughts are loud, but my heart is quiet. That's okay. I sit in the silence. And in that silence, I hear her. The version of me who doesn't need to prove, just exist. She reminds me, you don't have to be anything today but honest. Honesty is uncomfortable. It forces you to admit what you're not okay with. It asks questions like, why are you really tired? Why do you keep saying yes when your body is screaming no? Why do you water dead plants just to feel useful? These aren't questions I ask lightly. They hurt, they open wounds, but they also open doors. And through those doors, I meet the parts of me I abandoned just to make life look neat. I meet the girl who used to dream before life made her shrink. I meet the woman who wants more but keeps settling for less because she's scared her voice won't echo back. I've stopped starting my day with pressure. The pressure to respond, to explain, to smile on cue. I'm learning that I don't owe anyone my energy before I've checked in with my own spirit. So I start small. I ask, what do I need today? Not to succeed, but to breathe. And it's not always deep. Sometimes it's hydration. Sometimes it's crying in the shower without guilt. Sometimes it's putting on music and dancing barefoot just to feel alive again. Whatever it is, I listen. Because the woman I'm becoming is not built by hustle. She's built by softness. The kind of softness that protects, not performs. There are days the truth scares me. Days when the truth sounds like you're not okay and you've been pretending for far too long. And even though that hurts, it's the kind of pain that frees me because I'd rather see that truth now than carry the lie into it. I used to think strength was about enduring in silence. Now I know it's about owning the silence and letting it speak. Some mornings I sit on the edge of my bed with tears I can't name. That's okay, because I'd rather cry with awareness than smile in denial. I don't always feel strong. I don't always feel ready. But I show up for myself anyway, even if it's just 5 minutes. 5 minutes of breath, 5 minutes of closing my eyes and saying, I love you, even when you don't feel lovable. I don't wait for the world to affirm me anymore. I've learned that waiting for someone else to see you is a slow way to disappear. So I see myself. I write down what I wish someone would say to me. I say it out loud, shaky voice and all, because the woman I'm becoming doesn't wait for validation. She gives it to herself first. The mirror has become my morning altar, not for vanity, for remembrance. I look at myself, not to critique, but to connect. I notice the tired eyes, the quiet strength, the parts of me that still ache but keep going. I whisper things like, I forgive you, I'm proud of you, I see how hard you're trying. And the more I say it, the more I believe it. Because healing happens when you speak kindly, to the parts of yourself you used to shame. When you stop performing wholeness and start practicing honesty, that's the moment you begin to feel like her, not perfect, but deeply present. The world will always demand something from you. Someone will always need your help, your time, your approval. But I've learned the hard way. If I don't give myself to me first, I show up to the world as a ghost, smiling, talking, nodding, but empty. So I choose myself every morning. Before the titles, before the roles, before the expectations, I return to the quiet, I return to truth. And the truth is, I'm not here to chase being that woman by doing more. I'm here to remember that she's already wise. Thin me. I just have to be still long enough to hear her voice. There was a time I didn't even notice how cruel I was to myself. The words I whispered in private were words I would never say to another soul. I'd look in the mirror and pick myself apart. Flaws first, always. Not good enough, not doing enough, not strong enough. That voice became the soundtrack of my mornings, and no one knew. I smiled in public, performed in silence, and carried a war inside me. I didn't realize the voice in my head wasn't mine. It was inherited, rehearsed, repeated. I never questioned it. Until one day, I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger looking back. She looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from trying to be everything to everyone. I stared at her like I'd betrayed her, because I had. I'd defended everyone but her, protected everyone but her, encouraged everyone but her. I had wrapped love around people who wouldn't even offer me honesty, but never once thought to give that same grace to myself. I told others, you're worthy, you're strong, you're doing your best, but I starved myself of those same words. I kept telling myself that love was for later, after I fixed everything broken, but love should have come first. So I began a quiet revolution, starting with how I spoke to myself. I began treating my inner voice like she was someone I loved, not tolerated, not managed, loved. And it wasn't easy. Every kind word felt foreign at first. Every compliment felt like a lie. But I said them anyway. I stood in front of the mirror and spoke gently, even when I didn't believe the words, especially then, because I realized if I'm going to become that woman, the one I admire, the one I dream of being, I have to speak to her like she already exists. No one tells you how healing it is to be kind to yourself, not the superficial, surface-level kind of kindness, but the deep kind, the one that holds your shame without judgment, the one that lets you cry and says, you're still good. The one that sees your flaws and says you're still beautiful. I started talking to myself like I would talk to a child who had been through too much, gently, softly, patiently, because I have been through too much, and I never gave myself permission to admit that, but that's where the healing started, with permission. Sometimes I'd catch myself slipping back into old patterns. I'd hear that voice again, the one that said, you're behind, you're not enough, you'll never get there. And instead of letting it control me, I'd pause, I'd respond, I'd say, that's not true, you're growing, you're healing, you're allowed to take your time. I became my own reassurance, because waiting for someone else to speak life into me left me empty. So I did it myself, and it felt powerful, like reclaiming a part of me I forgot I was allowed to protect. I stopped laughing at jokes that were really just insults to myself. I'm a mess. I can't do anything right. Typical me. I stopped hiding behind sarcasm and started standing in truth. Because words matter, even the ones you don't say out loud, especially those. I started choosing new ones. I am soft and I am solid. I am allowed to rest. I am not defined by how much I produce. I started saying these things on repeat until they felt like mine. And slowly, I became the voice I always needed to hear. The mirror became a moment of reckoning. I didn't look away anymore. I stood still and met my own eyes. I told her, I'm sorry for the years I made you feel less. I told her, I see your effort even when no one else claps. I told her, you are not broken, you are becoming. And sometimes that was all I needed to hear to keep going. I didn't need motivation, I needed mercy. I didn't need to be told to push harder. I needed someone, me, to say, it's okay to pause. You're still worthy. I began writing letters to the version of me I used to hate. The girl who stayed too long, who didn't speak up, who thought being quiet was the safest way to survive. I wrote to her with compassion. I told her, you did what you had to do, but you don't have to live in that survival anymore. I forgave her, I held her, and I made her feel seen, because that girl didn't need fixing, she needed love. And every time I speak gently to myself, I let her know she's finally safe. People think becoming that woman means achieving more, looking better, being admired, but it's not about that. It's about this, about what happens in the quiet when no one's clapping. It's about the small moment where you whisper to yourself, "I'm proud of you," and actually mean it. Where you don't wait for permission to rest, to dream, to start again. Where your voice becomes a safe place, not a battleground. That's what makes her powerful. Not perfection, but how she speaks to herself when no one else is listening. So now, every day, I choose my words like medicine. I check in with my tone like I would with a child. Would I say that to someone I love? If not, it doesn't belong in my mind. I remind myself that softness is not weakness, that affirmations are not delusion, they're direction. And when the doubts come, and they always do, I answer them with compassion, not control, because the way I speak to myself shapes the woman I wake up as. And I want to wake up as someone who feels safe, seen, and deeply loved, even by the voice in her own head. I used to think healing was just about setting goals, journaling, drinking water, meditating in the morning. I thought if I just kept achieving, kept ticking off boxes, I would feel whole again. But even on my most productive days, I still felt hollow. I still felt like I was betraying myself in ways that were quiet but cruel. I'd say yes when my soul was begging me to say no. I'd hold conversations that drained me, smile through moments that cut me open, and keep peace by silencing myself. I didn't realize that I was building a life that looked peaceful but didn't feel like home. Because I never learned how to set boundaries. I only knew how to keep people comfortable. Boundaries felt foreign at first, like rejection wrapped in guilt, like love with conditions. I thought if I pulled back, I was being cold. If I said no, I was being mean. But what I didn't understand was that I was already bleeding, quietly, under the weight of everyone else's needs. I had trained myself to anticipate the moods of others before I even checked in with my own. I had become fluent in self-abandonment, smiling when I wanted to cry, agreeing when I wanted to scream, showing up when I needed to sit down, and no one noticed, because I never let them see what it cost me. I started noticing how often I apologized just for existing, for needing space, for asking for clarity, for not being available at the drop of a text. And every time I said I'm sorry when I hadn't done anything wrong, I chipped away at the truth of who I was. I wasn't being kind. I was being conditioned. Conditioned to overextend, conditioned to be agreeable, conditioned to earn love by proving I could handle it all, and I carried that like a badge of honor until my body started breaking down. Not from weakness, but from the weight of unspoken needs I kept swallowing. I realized I had built a life based on what I feared losing, not what I truly desired. I feared being misunderstood. I feared being seen as selfish. I feared letting people down more than I feared letting myself down. And so I stretched, I bent, I contorted, I shrunk, until I barely recognized the shape of my own soul. My calendar was full, but my heart was vacant. My voice was present, but my power was missing. And I finally asked myself, what is the cost of constantly saying yes? The answer was sobering, me. So I started drawing lines, not to keep people out, but to keep myself in. I stopped justifying my silence and started protecting my peace. I stopped engaging in conversations that made me feel small. I stopped feeling obligated to explain my healing to those who only ever loved the broken version of me. And it was hard. It was lonely. It was terrifying. But it was also the first time I felt free. Free from the expectation that I had to carry everything with a smile. Free from the belief that love required exhaustion. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors. Doors that I open when I feel safe and close when I feel drained. They are not about being distant, they're about being honest, about saying, I love you, but I love me too. And sometimes loving me looks like not answering the phone. Sometimes it looks like not going to that event. Sometimes it looks like disappointing others so I can stop betraying myself. And every time I honored a boundary, I reclaimed a piece of the woman I lost in the process of being everything to everyone. There were days I questioned myself, days I wondered if I was doing too much, if maybe I was becoming cold. But then I'd remember the nights I cried from exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing, but from pretending. Pretending I was okay, pretending I could handle more, pretending that being liked was more important than being whole. I had sacrificed sleep, sanity, and self-respect for the sake of appearing agreeable. and I was done. Done leaking energy just to make people stay. I began rewriting the definition of strength, not as endurance, but as discernment. Strength became the ability to walk away when something was misaligned, the power to say, I choose peace over performance, the courage to disappoint others and still hold my head high, because I'm not here to please, I'm here to protect the woman I'm becoming, the one who knows that her value is not tied to her availability, that her worth isn't proven by how much she tolerates. Because I wasn't living for applause anymore, I was living for alignment. I used to chase peace while inviting chaos into my space. Now I understand that peace is not passive, peace is intentional. Peace says not here, not anymore. And the more I practiced boundaries, the more I began to feel safe inside my own life. Not controlled, not used, not drained, just safe, and that feeling is everything. Every morning now I ask myself not what needs to be done, but what no longer deserves access. I don't owe explanations for choosing peace. I don't owe guilt for honoring my needs. I don't owe anyone the pieces of me I fought so hard to reclaim. My healing is not up for negotiation. My boundaries are not optional. They are the quiet declarations of a woman who finally stopped abandoning herself. And even if it makes me misunderstood, I choose me, again and again, because I've learned no goal, no dream, no person is worth the cost of losing myself. There was a time I moved through life on autopilot. Wake up, survive, repeat. I didn't decorate my space because I thought it wasn't worth it. I wore clothes that didn't fit who I was becoming, just who I had been surviving as. I rushed through meals, ignored the light in the room, and played music only when someone else was around. Everything felt functional, but never beautiful, never soft, never intentional. I didn't realize how much I was telling myself I didn't matter, not with my words, but with how I lived around myself. It was like my life had become a waiting room for someone else's permission to feel whole. One day, I looked around and realized I'd built a life that was clean but empty, organized but unloved. My home didn't feel like it belonged to a woman who cherished herself. It felt like a space someone just passed through. I stopped lighting candles, I stopped opening windows, I stopped setting the table just for me, and I told myself, what's the point? But that question was never about the candles or the table, it was about me. I didn't feel worthy of beauty unless someone else could witness it. I didn't feel deserving of softness unless it served someone else's comfort. So I made survival look presentable and called it living. It's strange how the absence of beauty in your environment slowly turns into the absence of joy in your spirit. You don't notice it at first, you just feel tired, uninspired, maybe even resentful. But underneath it all is a quiet ache, the kind that asks, why does it feel like no one is taking care of me? And the hardest truth was this, no one was, not even me. I was waiting for someone to show up and treat me like I mattered, when all along, I was supposed to be the first one to do it. I was supposed to be the one who looked at myself and said, you are worth creating a life you love waking up to. So I started small. I lit one candle, played one soft song in the morning. I picked out clothes that felt like me, not just what I thought would blend in. I poured my coffee into a mug I loved instead of the same old chipped one I never thought to replace. I cleaned my space, not because someone was coming over, but because I was staying. And for the first time in a long time, I treated my presence like it meant something. Not as a duty, not as a burden, but as a reason to honor the space I exist in, even if no one else would ever see it. It wasn't about luxury, it was about intention. It was about finally understanding that beauty is not something you wait for, it's something you create. It's not about impressing the world, it's about nourishing your soul. And slowly, as I chose beauty on purpose, I began to heal. The ache didn't vanish overnight, but it softened, it stopped screaming. Because I stopped ignoring myself. I stopped walking past the parts of me that needed attention. I started setting the tone of my life like it mattered, like I mattered, and that changed everything. People think feeling like that woman is about having the perfect routine. The flawless skin, the morning smoothie. But for me, it started with the decision to care enough to make things special even when no one was watching, to light the candle even when the room is silent, to make the bed even when I'll be the only one who sees it, because it wasn't about the candle or the bed, it was about presence, about treating this moment, this breath, this body, like it is worth something sacred. That woman doesn't wait for a reason to feel alive. She makes one. I began to fall in love with the ritual of coming home to myself. The small habits became soft prayers, putting lotion on slowly, holding my mug with 2 hands, listening to the silence without needing to fill it. There was something holy in the way I started treating my ordinary moments like ceremonies. And in doing so, I realized I wasn't rebuilding a routine. I was rebuilding a relationship with myself, with my worth, with the parts of me that longed to be remembered, not just managed. I was finally showing up for the woman I had always needed. There were days I still felt the pull of numbness, days when the room felt too quiet, when the soft music made me cry instead of calm me. But even then, I showed up. I didn't run from the discomfort, I stayed, because I wanted to be the kind of woman who doesn't abandon herself when the feeling gets heavy. I wanted to be the kind of woman who keeps choosing beauty even when the world feels dark. And the more I did, the more I realized healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the softness of folding clean sheets and whispering, "I am still here." I started talking to myself with more reverence. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't just check for flaws, I checked for presence. Are you here with me? Are you still breathing? Are you still choosing to show up even when it's hard? And the answer, most days, was yes. I began to dress in a way that honored my body, not punished it. I wore perfume just to go to the grocery store. I bought flowers for no reason other than I wanted to feel joy when I walked into the room. These weren't acts of vanity, they were acts of remembrance, of reclamation. Now, when I open my eyes in the morning, I don't rush to prove anything. I pause. I take in the light, the quiet, the stillness. I remind myself that I am allowed to create a life that feels beautiful to me. Not someday, not when things are more stable, not when someone else finally notices me. Now, in the smallest ways, in the gentlest habits, I am learning to live as though I deserve softness. I am learning to see beauty not as a reward, but as a right. And the woman I'm becoming, she was always here. She was just waiting for me to make room for her to arrive.